and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. The World Health Organization says all hypotheses are still open in its search for the origins of COVID-19. Meanwhile, Mexico has reported more than 1,300 COVID-19 deaths for the third day in a row, bringing its toll to over 172,000. In Pakistan, 58 more people lost their lives while over 1,200 tested positive for the virus overnight. The country's death toll has reached 12,276. Globally, the number of infections has surpassed 108 million, while the virus has claimed over 2.38 million lives so far. The UN rights body has unanimously adopted a resolution on Myanmar calling for the restoration of the democratically elected government. It added that all those detained arbitrarily, including State Counsel Aung San Suu Kyi, must be immediately and unconditionally released. Myanmar's envoy said the resolution is not acceptable. In India, the farmer leader said the government is not showing seriousness to resume talks with the protesters over the contentious laws. Addressing media, the union leader said they are ready for the 12th round of negotiations, but the centre must come up with a proposal. Meanwhile, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi says he will continue to support the farmers who have been protesting at Delhi border for 78 days. Italy's new government, led by former European Central Bank chief Mario Draghi, is set to be sworn in today. Italy's President Sergio Mattarella asked Draghi to be Prime Minister after party wrangling brought down the previous administration. This will be Italy's third administration in less than 3 years and will face votes of confidence in both houses of parliament from Monday. And in cricket, Pakistan is set to face South Africa in the second 2020 International on Saturday at Gaddafi Stadium in Lahore. The Green Caps lead the three-match series 1-0. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The World Health Organization says all hypotheses are still open in its search for the origins of COVID-19. Meanwhile, Mexico has reported more than 1,300 COVID-19 deaths for the third day in a row, bringing its toll to over 172,000. Globally, the number of infections has surpassed 108 million, while the virus has claimed over 2.38 million lives so far. Details in the following report.
The spread of the new variants and an unexpected sluggish vaccine rollouts are making governments to keep the curbs in place, even as the number of cases drop. World Health Organization's chief, Tedros Adhanom, confirmed the drop in new cases across the globe, calling the trend encouraging. However, he cautioned against relaxing the restrictions that have allowed the world to reach this point. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has issued new guidance for schools to reopen with masks and rigid health protocols. New York's governor's top aide accuses the administration of delaying the release of data on COVID-19 deaths at nursing homes to avoid a potential federal investigation. Over in South Mexican funeral homes and cemeteries are being overwhelmed with corpses as the country's coronavirus death toll continues to spike.
We are talking about approximately 18,000 graves which have occupied a little more than 40% of the cemetery. But yes, we hope that it does not happen, that we don't get to the point where we have to use a mass grave.
Italy is extending its travel ban between regions by another week, while Portugal is set to extend its border controls until March. France's health authority has become the first to recommend that only one dose of the vaccine can be administered to people already infected. In the United Kingdom, the reproduction number of R value of the virus has fallen below 1 for the first time since July. The lower house of the parliament in the Czech Republic has refused to extend a state of emergency as the country deals with a highly contagious variant.
It certainly is about the British variant. What percentage of the variant has gone through the population of the Radek-Kralova region, and what we can expect if a majority of the population has already had it. Thank God, and maybe the number of cases will decrease with time. If not, then the situation can become very dramatic.
Australia's state of Victoria has entered a 5-day lockdown as authorities race to prevent a third wave sparked by the variant first found in the UK. Meanwhile, a new study by the Cleveland Clinic team found that vitamin C and zinc do not do anything to help coronavirus patients.
In Pakistan, 58 more people have lost their lives to COVID-19, raising the death toll to 12,276. The health ministry says 1,262 people tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry said the total number of cases detected in the country has crossed 561,000. Meanwhile, over 523,000 people have recovered from the disease so far. The number of active COVID-19 cases in the country has topped 25,000. The ministry said nearly 1,700 patients are in critical condition. In India, the farmer leader said the government is not showing seriousness to resume talks with the protesters over the contentious laws. Addressing media, the union leader said they're ready for the 12th round of negotiations, but the centre must come up with a proposal. They said the protesting farmers will not return to their fields until all their demands are met. Meanwhile, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi says he will continue to support the farmers. Gandhi said he will take part in the tractor rally in Ajmer today and will also address the farmers' gatherings in Nagaur. Farmers have been camping at several border points in the country's capital, New Delhi, for 78 days. More than 200 protesting farmers have died during the demonstrations, including 4 who committed suicide. The human rights body has unanimously adopted a resolution on Myanmar calling for the restoration of a democratically elected government. The resolution read all those detained arbitrarily, including State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, must be immediately and unconditionally released. The United Nations said it is essential that life-saving humanitarian assistance continues to be delivered in Myanmar. The U.S. urged the UN member states to target Myanmar's coup leaders with sanctions to promote their accountability. Myanmar's envoy said the resolution is not acceptable. This comes as thousands of protesters took to streets across Myanmar against the coup for the 8th straight day. Meanwhile, parliamentarians from Myanmar have called for a UN probe into rights abuses by the military. Iran has dismissed the E3's remarks condemning Tehran's production of uranium metal. In a tweet, Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said Iran's position is in line with the 2015 nuclear deal. He said it is not Iran's responsibility to stop the remedial measures it undertook after the US withdrew from the deal. Zarif also questioned the compliance of UK, France and Germany's obligations to the deal. Earlier, London, Paris and Berlin called on Iran to stop all activities that violate 2015 nuclear deal. In a joint statement, the three powers said Iran has no justification for producing uranium metal in violation of the accord. Italy's new government, led by former European Central Bank chief Mario Draghi, is set to be sworn in today. Italy's President Sergio Mattarella asked Draghi to be Prime Minister after party wrangling brought down the previous administration. In a press conference, Draghi unveiled a cabinet with a mix of technocrats and politicians from his broad coalition. This will be Italy's third administration in less than 3 years and will face votes of confidence in both houses of parliament from Monday. Draghi is tasked with tackling the coronavirus health crisis and rescuing the Italian economy from the worst recession since the Second World War. The United States has revoked the designation of Yemen's Houthi rebels as a terrorist organization. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says only 3 Houthi leaders will remain under sanctions. In a statement, Blinken said the move was necessitated by the dire humanitarian situation in Yemen. He added the move follows warnings from the UN and other humanitarian groups that the designation could jeopardize crucial aid to Yemenis. But he said Washington is identifying new sanctions targets, especially those responsible for missile strikes on Saudi Arabia. The Houthis' terror designation took effect on former President Donald Trump's last full day in the office. The United States says it is re-engaging with its G7 allies to help steer the global economy out of its worst slump. Addressing a G7 meeting virtually, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen reiterated Washington's commitment to multilateralism. Yellen said the U.S. places a high priority on deepening its global engagement and strengthening alliances. She called for continued financial support to secure the recovery, saying the time to go big is now. The G7 peers also emphasized ensuring the sustainability of public finances. They also called for reaching an international solution to the tax challenges of the digital economy and declared it a key priority. Former U.S. President Donald Trump's lawyers have termed the incitement of insurrection charge against him a monstrous lie. The remarks came a day 4 of Trump's impeachment trial as they presented evidence in the U.S. Senate. Lawyer Michael Vander Ween said the impeachment proceedings are a politically motivated witch hunt by the Democrats. Vander Ween argued that telling the crowd they needed to fight like hell was simply a political speech. He said the trial is an effort to not just smear Trump, but the 75 million Americans who voted for him. The lawyers also argued that Trump had a legal right to challenge the election result. Earlier, the Democrats has presented new video footage of the Capitol Hill incident, taking the Senate step by step to the riots.
To claim that the president in any way wished, desired, or encouraged lawless or violent behavior is a preposterous and monstrous lie. In fact, the first 2 messages the president sent via Twitter once the incursion of the Capitol began were, "Stay peaceful and no violence, because we are the party of law and order."
More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pakistan's President Dr. Arif Alvi says the world needs to strive for global and regional peace. Addressing the Aman 2021 exercise at Karachi, Alvi said Pakistan aims for morality-based international cooperation. He said Pakistan is becoming a geo-economic hub. He said blue economy is the future of the world. However, the exploitation of marine resources should benefit all. Alvi added resolving Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir issue is vital for regional growth. Meanwhile, addressing the conference, Naval Chief Admiral Amjad Khan Niazi thanked all the navies for their participation. Niazi said China-Pakistan economic corridor will stimulate regional economic transformation. British human rights lawyer Karim Khan has been elected as the new prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. Khan won a secret ballot against 3 other candidates to replace lead prosecutor Fatou Bensouda. Khan, who is also the Queen's Counsel, is best known for heading the UN Special investigation into ISIS crimes in Iraq. Britain's Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said Khan's extensive experience will be pivotal to gain justice for the victims of crimes. The position of the prosecutor of Court's War Tribunal is a politically daunting position, whose incumbent was slapped with US sanctions. The United Nations has urged the United States to relax Venezuela-related sanctions. UN Special Rapporteur Alina Duhan said the US and EU curbs in Venezuela are worsening its humanitarian crisis. In a report, Duhan called for granting Venezuelan government access to funds frozen in the US, UK, and Portugal. She also called for the implementation of cooperation agreements between Venezuela and the UN Human Rights Office.
while recognizing the devastating effect of unilateral sanctions on the broad scope of human rights, especially the right to food, right to health, right to life, right to education, and right to development, I call the government of Venezuela and the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights to implement fully cooperation agreements signed between them.
Meanwhile, the Venezuelan opposition has labeled the UN recommendation as regime propaganda. And now moving on, 15 Turkish sailors kidnapped by pirates last month off the Nigerian coast have been freed. Maritime companies involved say the entire crew is now safe and in contact with their families. They thank the Turkish and Nigerian governments for their support. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said the crew members will soon be brought to Turkey from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. On 23rd of January, 15 of the ship's 19 crew members were abducted, while one Azeri sailor was killed. China says the decision to ban BBC World News is legitimate and reasonable. A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Britain said the BBC violated broadcasting rules on accuracy and impartiality. He said the grave violations undermine Beijing's national interests and ethnic solidarity. The spokesperson urged the British broadcaster to abandon the Cold War mentality and stop spreading disinformation. Meanwhile, the Chinese envoy to European Union said double standards shall not be applied to fighting disinformation. Responding to EU's statement on BBC ban, the envoy said the freedom of the press and the double standards can only be seen as freedom of disinformation. A 6.4 magnitude earthquake jolts different parts of Pakistan, including Islamabad, Lahore and Peshawar. According to Pakistan Meteorological Department, the quake's epicenter was the Tajikistan-Xinjiang border region. Strong tremors were also felt in parts of northern India, including New Delhi and as far as Srinagar. There were no reports of loss to life or property. The Lunar New Year has begun in Asian countries like China, South Korea and Vietnam to mark the first new moon of the lunisolar calendars. According to the Chinese zodiac, this is the year of the ox, bidding farewell to the year of the rat. More in this report.
The 15 days of festivities begin with a reunion family feast of traditional food on New Year's Eve and culminate with a lantern festival. People gift each other money wrapped in red envelopes, which signifies the arrival of good luck. Streets of several cities have been adorned with colorful in-season flowers to welcome the Chinese New Year.
This show has a history of more than 100 years. We must continue to pass it on, and we shall never lose it.
This year's festivities are held in accordance with strict coronavirus measures to contain its dispersion. China has discouraged holiday travel after recent outbreaks forced widespread testing and quarantine requirements.
I am thinking of my family. That is, I do miss home quite a lot. But on the other hand, we have to think of everyone during the pandemic. This is understandable, so I decided not to go back this time.
As it waves goodbye to the year of the rat and welcomes in the year of the ox, China has largely brought the virus under control. Pakistan has sent festive greetings to Chinese people in celebration of the Lunar New Year and hailed Beijing's support amid the pandemic.
Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.